To say that a book has changed my life sounds like a cliché. There aren't many that truly do, but Jem Bendell's Breaking Together, a freedom-loving response to collapse, is certainly one of them. I read it in solitude in 2024 while retreating in the northern Portuguese countryside to focus on the writing of my first novel. I thought I was just retreating to write. I didn't realize that I was also stepping into another kind of initiation. Chapter after chapter of Breaking Together, my mind and heart broke more and more open. I learned about Jem's story and the money system, about global food supply chains and the latest climate science with no sugarcoating. I learned why our modern civilization is structurally bound for collapse and how unlikely it is that our political institutions will save us. I also learned about the lives of the doomsters, those of us who have accepted the inevitability of collapse and are seeking to live our most meaningful, beautiful lives, not despite our predicament, but because of it. The permission that Breaking Together gave me was simple. Go wild, be free. Don't put your energy into chasing the illusion of success inside a crumbling system. Focus on what truly matters: radical social transformation through direct action, community resilience, art, creativity, and real spiritual development. So, when I heard Jem Bendell was coming to Lisbon for the launch of the Portuguese edition of Breaking Together, I had to try and interview him. What I didn't expect was to end up co-moderating the book launch itself, alongside researcher and activist Pedro Macedo and their wonderful team at Bamboal, the publisher responsible for bringing this book to Portuguese-speaking readers. What follows is a snippet from the beginning of that event, so you can feel into this vital book and Jem's important message. So I'm a spontaneous moderator today. I'll do my best. I'm Carlota. I feel that also this tragedy that happened in Lisbon, also in the context of that tragedy, I feel like Breaking Together is a very powerful book. At least my experience of it is that it's a book that really has clear this message of memento mori, remember you'll die, and not in a way that is fatalistic, but actually is inviting one to just sit with the seriousness of that issue and then live your most beautiful life possible precisely because of it. So maybe as a segue into the introduction of this book and you, Jem, telling a bit what this book is about, you also spoke sometimes about this double meaning of breaking together. So maybe you could start there, sharing a bit of this meaning of the title and what the book is about.
Yeah, thank you to both of you for acknowledging the somber context. And yeah, obviously a tragedy like what's happened with the Gloria funicular triggers so many different thoughts and emotions, incomprehension. But yes, you're right. One thing that we can all take from it is also this realizing that we don't know when our day will come, and yeah, many philosophers and wisdom teachers have told us to live with death on our shoulder and love in our hearts, and yeah, often grief reminds us of the fact that we love. And we've all had our own experiences of grief in life and how it's reminded us of how much we love. So yeah, with such a shock and unavoidable disaster, then there's also that side to it too. And thank you all of you for coming out despite the shock that Lisbon and therefore yourselves are having right now. I will come to your question, but I've just been sitting here really enjoying being in a bookshop. I love it, and I realize it's because I've been living out of a suitcase, really, so I don't have my bookshelves anymore, and I just don't think, I shouldn't say this, should I? I don't think about buying books anymore. Oops. But you should buy mine. But because I'm living out of a suitcase, so it's all on my device and or audio, and it's so nice because it's a reminder of how much I love the creative exploration of ideas. I love it, and what it's reminded me of is that I remember when I lived in Singapore, I used to go to an old second-hand bookshop just to feel a bit human again. I don't know if anyone's been to Singapore, but it's so glitzy, so modern, glass and steel and concrete and people making shitloads of money, and apart from me when I was there. But the bookshop, I'd go there and it'd be like, oh, yes, I felt rooted, connected, and reminded of the joy of being human. And I was actually having a date. I was meant to have a date in that bookshop, and she didn't show up. So, but I remember that's when, therefore, I was looking on, and I saw a book called When You're Falling, Dive. So dive, and it was by Mark Matusek, and because my date didn't show up, I ended up buying the book, and it's a book about how much treasure there is in our deepest wounds. And so there were lots of interviews with people who'd lost partners through the AIDS crisis, for example. And it was very, very powerful. It was a very spiritual book, and yet in such an accessible way, where it was basically for me, it was a very new thing to reframe suffering, disease, death, tragedy, and even incomprehensible, like unfair loss. In a way, reframe that as a path of despair to some kind of existential, eternal joy. And with testimonies of people who had done that. And I think looking back, I think that would have been 2008, 2009, 2010, around then. I think looking back, that book and that sense that we can find some sort of also even magical power in our emotional suffering helped me as I started to look again at the data and the science on just how bad things are with the world's climate. And it doesn't make, just because I can find some personal transformation through going through my own grief and despair, doesn't make the tragedy of climate change go away. Of course it doesn't. It doesn't lessen it. But it also, I think, shows that me and many other people, we can allow it to change us, allow the awareness of it to change us. And then we don't know what will happen as a result, as more and more of us give up our old stories, identities, habits of living, are shocked, awake by the tragedy of climate change. And then we'll something different will happen. But you've asked me about the title of the book. So in English, it's Breaking Together. Now, there's the phrase, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but we all do. And I'm really pleased I did. I loved the title, When You're Falling, Dive. So I ended up picking it up. So I want to say a little bit about the cover first, before the title. What's this on the front? Anyone recognize it? Atlas. Yes, Atlas. It's quite a cheeky use of Atlas, and I'll come back to that. But so this is the Farnese Atlas, which I think we can still find in Rome. I think it's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, statue of Atlas. So Atlas was a Greek Titan god, and I'm not a classicist, but my reading of it is also a bit unconventional. So according to what we think about what the ancients knew, that's not the planet Earth on his back, because they supposedly didn't think the Earth was round, but actually there's some good evidence they did thousands of years ago. That's meant to be the heavens. And so he's carrying the whole of the heavens, the universe, on his back. Or not carrying it on his back, holding it up. Because the myth is that Atlas was cursed with having to hold up the heavens, otherwise they would come crashing down and kill everyone, including the family he loved. And so some readings of the Titan gods, they represent aspects of not nature, but human nature. And so you can read into this a story that, well, so if Atlas represents humans and where humans are, then, you know, we don't have to hold up the heavens. They won't, if we stop trying to hold up the heavens, they won't come crashing down, they won't kill our family. So actually, he was cursed with the idea that he had to hold up the heavens and believing it. And it's actually kind of nice, isn't it nice that he actually tried to save everyone, including his family, by struggling to hold up the heavens. But also it was a delusion. It's extremely anthropocentric. It's all down to you, Atlas. So the other thing I've done there, anyone Japanese in the audience? No, anyone been to Japan? So I've done what's called kintsugi. So I made this with my friend Darinka Monteko, an artist. And kintsugi is the idea that things that we love at home, we break. You know, probably we've all had a mug or a cup or a plate that's been passed down through generations, and we accidentally break it. And then if you stick it back together again with gold, cleverly, it can look really beautiful. And so it's no longer the same function. It's no longer the plate or the mug that you might use like it used to be used. Instead, it's a symbol of how you somehow cherish your connection with the past and the memories of community and in your family. Maybe it might remind you of your deceased mother or grandmother. So it becomes an object of love and veneration because of it breaking and then being stuck back together again. So the Kintsugi Atlas is talking about this idea of anthropocentrism, how we fucked up the planet because we thought we were the center of everything, and we thought we had to save everything, and actually if we just chilled out and been nice and fitted in with the rest of ecology, we wouldn't have destroyed it as we have. But it's actually kind of nice that we still care. It's kind of nice that we want to try and fix things. So let's try and put this back together again in a better way. So there you go. That's the cover. So if you're judging the book by the cover and you like that story, there's far more in it than that. So please buy it. So the Breaking Together. How do you say that? Can you say that title in Portuguese?
Juntos na ruptura, slightly different.
Yes. So Breaking Together is there's two big sections to it. The first half, second half. The first half is about how all the foundational systems of modern industrial consumer society are breaking together. They're breaking at the same time. So our energy systems, food systems, political systems, money systems, economic systems, biodiversity, and also a stable climate. And so there are these sort of cascading failures. And so what's breaking is more than just because of, in some countries, some things have gone wrong, perhaps because of a bad political class or a leader or some unhelpful situations for that climate or a particular bad enemy or whatever. It's saying, no, this is a worldwide decline indicated by data on biodiversity, climate, economics, Human Development Index, life expectancy, etc., there's this ongoing decline, and it's caused by, I argue in the book, the foundations of modern industrial consumer life beginning to fracture. And so therefore I conclude that we don't fix this, we don't go back to how it's been in recent decades for the majority of the middle class, the consumer class. This will continue. And so what I say is then, we could call it a breakdown, but a breakdown can also people think, well, we can then fix it up again. If a car breaks down, we fix it and it goes away again. I use the word collapse to say that we don't fix this. We don't know how fast, how bad, how widespread, and we don't know how long a kind of a collapsed situation will last, and we don't know what comes next. But that leaves open lots of questions for what we do, but also leaves open lots of questions about what we stop doing if we think that we can't continue this way of life. So that's the first half, and then the second half is the other meaning of the term breaking together, which is that rather than breaking apart ourselves in our communities or between nations and ethnicities and religions, rather than developing a bunker mentality like I want to protect me and my family, and a bunker mentality can be expressed in many ways. It can be anti-immigrant, it can be even I want to go away and live in an eco-community with me and my friends and nobody else. There are many ways of having a bunker mentality. It's saying rather than doing that, can we find ways of being open about our difficult emotions, our pain in the situation, our wishes in that context, and try and retain what's good about humans and human community. So that can we break together rather than apart in this context? And rather than that being a completely naive hope, in the book I talk about people who, because of either the disruption to their life that they've been through, or their awareness of, their acceptance of an unraveling of either ecology or climate or their society, they've changed their lives. They've quit their jobs, they've decided to become community leaders or activists or yoga teachers or anything. I mention a few different people doing different interesting things.
The next day, Jem and I met in a more intimate setting to record the conversation you're about to hear. My angle, as usual, was personal. Instead of asking Jem about societal collapse, which he's spoken about widely elsewhere, I wanted to meet the human behind the thesis. Who is Jem Bendell? How did he become who he is? How did he get to do this important work? And what does it mean for him to live with more consciousness and wisdom now? Stay with us to find out. Jem Bendell is a world-renowned scholar on the breakdown of modern societies due to environmental change. For decades, he worked in sustainable development as a researcher, NGO manager, professor, and consultant to businesses, political parties, and UN agencies. In 2012, he was recognized as a young global leader by the World Economic Forum and has since become one of the clearest critics of the globalist agenda on sustainable development. In 2018, after a sabbatical studying the latest climate science, Jem published Deep Adaptation, an academic paper that went viral and is credited to inspiring the Extinction Rebellion movement. Since then, Jem has stepped away from the sustainability industry. He published Breaking Together in 2023, moved to Bali, opened an organic farming school, became a singer, songwriter, and, in his own words, a militant mysticist. I'm Carlota Guedes, and this is the Waking Youth Podcast. So, the first question is, when you close your eyes and think about your childhood and your experience of the beyond of spirituality, religion, whether it was formal or more intimate in your inside of yourself? What comes to mind? How would you describe your spiritual background as a kid?
It's good you edit this. Those lovely Portuguese cakes are just there. Yeah, so there was a massive turning point for me. I think I was 15 years or 16 years old. And I'd been very motivated by what I was studying in school about the Amazon rainforest and the destruction of that and the suffering of indigenous peoples who lived there. I'd also become fascinated and horrified by the use of nuclear weapons to end World War II, arguably weren't needed to end that war in Japan. So, I was a very curious and passionate teenager about all these kind of big issues. My mum paid for me to go on a Church Youth Fellowship Association CIFA camp in one summer. And it was the first time where I really met people who, for them, their Christianity was about love rather than dogma. And I met people from very different types of religious congregations, so not just the Anglican or whatever, including some evangelicals. And I met people who were, because of their faith, doing palliative care, for example, caring for the dying, or because of their faith were youth workers in some of the poorest, roughest parts of Britain. And they were inspired by their belief in Jesus Christ. And I thought, wow. And I had not experienced that before. And I was there for a week. And at the same time, we were doing these Bible classes, which were so ridiculous and stupid, I thought. Reading this old book with loads of silly words and lots of stuff that didn't make sense. And you really had to work hard to try and make it make sense. And you had to ignore a lot of stuff in order to stay focused on the spiritual wisdom. And I thought, can we not just accept that this Bible is not kind of the best means of us connecting with the message of Jesus Christ, or trying to connect with this sense of universal loving consciousness in ourselves? Why do we have to be so attached to it? So even though I met people who weren't into dogma, they were still very attached to the Bible, of which about 3/4 is just, I think, quite a lot of nonsense, the Old Testament. So
so did you rebel then?
Yeah, that's what happened. So it gave me this massive inspiration. And I remember sitting it was in Milton Abbey in the UK. I remember sitting in the church there and thinking, there's something truly in this. So there is a divine consciousness which people are calling God, and there is something very powerful in the message of Jesus, but this isn't where I belong. And that I couldn't go to church when I went back home. But I had this spiritual curiosity and sense of it's real. So that's what that gave me, that this is real, that we can call it a God or divine or the universal Holy Spirit. There's something other than just being an upstanding member of society who will get trained and get a good job and have a family. And, there's something much more alive than that. And so at some point, I remember looking up at the sky once in the lunch hour of a Saturday job I had, which was terribly boring, counting tickets for a ferry company. I looked up at the sky and I saw it, and I thought, okay, so the world is going to be my church and my work will be my worship. And what I meant it was a kind of a spiritual motivation to work on environmentalism. And that was the age of 15 or 16. Maybe it was 16.
And where was this impulse or calling coming from? You also mentioned at that time the Green European Party was also on the rise. So why do you think you were called to do this kind of work? It's also quite young, 15.
So, because my dad was in the Navy and my mum didn't want him going away to sea in ships for 6 to 9 months anymore, he took shore jobs around the world. So, as a kid, I lived in Australia and America and different parts of Britain. So, because of that, I had a different experience than many people. As a child, I saw the world and I saw different cultures. So that meant that I was very curious about what was happening in the world. And so I was very curious about destruction of habitats and rainforests and acid rain and all kinds of other environmental issues that were quite well known and in the media in the late 80s in Britain. So, yeah, it's that exposure that meant I was aware, and my international perspective on things through my childhood and living around the world. I think, that came together.
I also read a bit in your blog about you being a sickly child and having eczema and also a condition on your nose and that. That's basically you had a different childhood from other kids, and that also taking you more to the intellectual realm and also equipping you to deal with suffering in a different way. Do you want to speak about that? And how was it to be you as a kid in that sense?
Yeah. Being a child with what's called perennial rhinitis. So imagine when you last had a cold, and imagine. So this is interesting because it didn't affect me until we moved back to the UK when I was 5 years old. So you could say I was allergic to the UK. But imagine the last time you had a cold and that you never don't have it. It's always there. So that was my itchy, runny nose. And from the age of 5. And then, I was given eczema by the National Health Service of the UK when they finally discovered, when I think I was 8, they finally discovered allergies. Previously, it's just psychological. Can you imagine? But back then it really was. They didn't know what to do with allergies. But suddenly they could have an empirical test where they could put our allergens with a needle into your skin on your forearm and then see what you were allergic to. And they say, okay, so now we know because we have a test. We can tell you about you because we can test you. So they told me I was allergic to cats and house dust mite. But the problem was, it exploded into a rash all over my body. And then I had bad eczema for about 10 years, including so bad that, at times I couldn't even bend my legs. So that's through my teenage years until, I was lucky. It really went away. I know people where it didn't really go away. But for me, when I was 19, it went away. And that was to do with leaving the UK. See, I must be allergic to the UK. And living in Egypt for 6 months and living at the Red Sea and very different lifestyle, and it healed my skin. But yes, you're right. That I did write about that because I then realized that, that did shape me, and it doesn't, it in positive and negative ways. Definitely, it made me more in my head than my body. I mean, it's obvious. But I think I looked at people who were just having fun and enjoying themselves and not thinking twice about that. And so I guess it created a sense of separation, isolation, and observation of society rather than just living in society. And I do wonder, I think there was a story in me, and I don't know if I've still got it, that I know suffering in a persistent, ongoing way,
Now also
more than maybe the normal child and person does. And of course, that's just a story. I don't know what those kids' home life was like, and I don't know if they had all kinds of problems and mental health problems, for example. But I had a story I realized that I can do this. I can look at painful things. I can suffer. So it was maybe a story of a personal story of I'm strong enough. And why I had that story, why it took me so long to realize that story, I don't know. Did it motivate me to be radical in my environmentalism? Maybe. In the end, we don't know. We construct stories about our life and what makes us who we are, and we think we know who we are, and then a few years later, it's like, oh, maybe something else is why I'm doing what I'm doing and feel the way I do. So at the moment, it's a provisional story about how I sort of worked so hard in environment, was that I thought I could face the pain.
And what I'm curious to explore, because I mean, in your paper in 2018, Deep Adaptation, and also before I watched the video, you were giving an interview at Davos, and you were already quite honest. And you also mentioned yesterday, you used this word rebel to describe yourself. There was a point you really rebelled. So I'm curious if you were a rebel back then, or if you were more conforming. I also read that when your conditions, like the physical conditions, got a bit better, then you found this love for cricket and you became really good at cricket, and then you couldn't keep playing or you couldn't be as good as you then were because of a condition in your spine. I think it was, but that gave you kind of the possibility of being really good at something, and then you shared, at least in that article, that then you kind of channeled that into your intellectual pursuits, and you seem to be, like back then and still, but the ambition seemed to be a driver for you, like a very big, very driven person. So, I'm curious if you were more conforming and seeking that conventional success, or if there was always this also rebel archetype in you.
So 2 things I would point to. Rebel, questioning things, an ability to see things differently, a sense of justice and fairness, and not feeling happy unless I did something about what I saw as injustice or unfairness or mistakes being made. That's part of who I am. But you point to something else, which is about the ego. And I had the type of ego that I got very excited. I got ecstatic about how good I was at fast bowling, and therefore pushed myself too much, too young, and didn't address the weaknesses. So that was interesting, the ecstasy of fast bowling. Possibly, yes, because of inhabiting my body again in a good way, when I'd suffered such a lot. Then I was heartbroken when I realized I just can't keep doing this. I'm not going to be a sportsman. And I think there was bringing that same, it's almost like aggression towards self. Like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to push on and do this. That kind of thing that I had with sport, I then applied to my academic work, scholarship work, studies, and
And what was your ambition? Like, when you looked ahead into your life, what was it really, this vocation, the calling to be of service, or there was also ego of you being recognized as this or that?
Yeah, I didn't know much about how you can work in conservation or the environment. I thought, I guess, either I'll be someone who is a forest ranger working in a forest, or I'll be someone who's driving a Greenpeace dinghy trying to stop nuclear waste dumping. And I didn't really know anything about what careers there might be as an environmentalist. That all began to appear to me when I was at university studying geography, and then I started to learn. So, from the age of 20 onwards, I realized that there's loads of jobs you can do in the field of environmental management, sustainability and stuff. Yeah.
And then you studied geography at Cambridge. Then you started also consulting and doing a lot of work in the field of sustainable development. Could you tell me a bit about that part of your life? What was going on inside of you? How was your experience of that? The people you met? What was important to you then? Just to have a sense of that version of Jem.
So right from the age of 15, I had a deep critique of society and capitalism, industrialism, consumerism. I was provided that critique by some of my teachers and some of the reading I did. Because the environmentalism in the West that grew in the 70s included a very deep critique of capitalism, industrialism, consumerism. The environmental problems of the world were not seen as just mere accidents. And that sort of deep green environmentalism was quite sophisticated and available to me. So like a book like Small is Beautiful, which was written, can't remember when it was written now. But yeah, it was 60s or early 70s. So yeah, I think 1973. Yeah. So yeah, I thought that we needed to do something different. We needed to bring these ideas into the mainstream. Yeah, that was a big idea of mine. It was a big story, and so I thought what I could do is keep my radicalist critique and yet find ways of working with businesses and large institutions like WWF, the Wildlife Group, and government. And of course, that idea was functional to me to try and have a career. Because if I had maintained my radical critique and therefore not thought of trying to change capitalism on the inside, then that would have limited the options for me. So it was
Was that conscious, that decision?
Yes, it was. It was a conscious decision which involved both fear and a sense of responsibility. And so the fear thing was, oh no, if I don't do this and find a way of working with business to promote sustainability, then how am I going to have a career? Am I going to look back when I'm 40 and feel poor and a failure and all my friends will be rich? And my brother even talked to me like that. He was the one who actually voiced those fears. And I said, oh, no, don't be silly. But that was there. That was a fear. And it manifests in other ways as well, which is that I was insecure around women back then. And so the idea was, well, unless I'm successful financially in my career and I have status, then how am I going to feel sexy or be sexy to anyone? Looking back, really stupid idea that you think, yeah, super stupid. But that was all in the mix. But it wasn't just fear. It was also, well, I don't want to be self-indulgent and just sort of, I don't know, protest against a road being built. That seemed like, yeah, but that's not going to really change much, is it? I'll just be arrested and the road will be built. So I actually thought it would be better to try and change business from the inside. I thought as a responsible person rather than just a fearful person who needed status, career, money. Yeah, so it was a mix of things.
I'm curious to ask, because you mentioned somewhere that you were always also curious about ancient wisdom traditions. And you said earlier also you were curious about this universal love, consciousness, etc., even though then you started being a bit critical of conventional or dogmatic religion. Did you had a double spiritual life, or in this stage of your life you were really focused on your work and more and changing things from inside capitalism, but not really engaging in that even intellectual pursuit of those wisdom traditions? I'm curious. Because then later you also talk about Buddhism, so I'm curious about that stage of your life.
Yeah, you haven't asked about it, but
I will.
when I was doing my PhD,
it was an international development.
In
your PhD?
International policy, but it was an interdisciplinary PhD. So I'd left university. I got a job at WWF, and that was working with businesses on their supply chain to try and save forests. And that was super exciting because there weren't those kinds of partnerships between charities and businesses back then. And we were creating independent eco-labels that would try and leverage consumer concern to change global supply chains. And we thought we were the future. And of course, we were part of the whole building of the corporate sustainability profession and movement. So, yeah. But then I did a PhD because I wanted to think about it as well and write about it. And I wasn't satisfied just having a job within that bigger field. I wanted to understand the bigger field and communicate about the bigger field and perhaps help it. But the spiritual thing, therefore, at the time, was kind of non-existent. I wasn't reading spiritual texts. I wasn't seeking to listen to spiritual teachers. I didn't have any spiritual practice, but there was something really powerful that maintained my spiritual inspiration as an environmentalist throughout that time, and it was MDMA.
Okay. You want to tell me more about that? It opened your heart.
More than that. I mean, back then it was good shit. Not that I can tell you what it's like now, because I probably haven't taken any MDMA for 20 years. But yeah, 1996, it was not just heart-opening. It helped me really see that my whole sense of a separate self was based on fear, of judgment, of insecurity, non-acceptance, and ultimately non-existence and death. And that actually there's another way of experiencing myself as part of a flow of matter, energy, and something even beyond matter and energy that I just don't know, we don't have words for. And that's truly who I am and what is me. And in that state, it's just pure bliss, and you don't have to do anything apart from you naturally want to share that way of being with other people. And because I had the context of Christianity and all that, those teachings, and I had a sense that this is something that shouldn't just exist in church, that it should be a way that we look at what's happening in the world and where we should apply ourselves to heal things in the world, which was my motivation with environmentalism. Because of that, the ecstasy experience on MDMA just basically reminded me of it and consolidated that and infused and inspired me again. And the memory of that state of consciousness maintained me in my daily life. And I didn't have E very much, like maybe a few times a year for a few years, and that was it.
In a recreational context or more
no,
private?
Purely recreational. Yeah, purely recreational. But what was interesting is that I then met people who were taking E perhaps more than I was at the time. I wasn't that much of a clubber. I wasn't, it was literally a few times a year for a few years, and that was it. But I met other people who did it regularly, and then they were hedge fund managers, or they were corporate lawyers. And I saw absolutely no connection whatsoever from what I presume were the states of consciousness they were accessing on this drug with what they were then doing on Monday morning. And I just couldn't work. How could you have the experience that I was having and then choose to live the life, do the jobs that you were doing? I kind of tried to talk to some people about it, but it was just blank. It was as if it was for them, the experience was very contained. So for me, it wasn't, but that's maybe because of the context of who I am. But yeah, it's odd. There you go. It was a drug-induced ongoing spiritual commitment to my work. And then, yeah, it's only in more recent years that I've made much more of a conscious focus on like the last 7 years, where I need spiritual practices and I need to study wisdom texts, and I need to talk to people about it, think about it, and invite people to talk about it. I need it to be part of my life explicitly to sustain who I am and how I am in the world. But that's only the last 7 years, and I'm 52 now, so it literally got through to 45 years old before I then really felt I needed this as part of my life.
So when did you first starting reaching out and seeking those practices again? At what point? Was this related to also your discoveries about the latest climate science?
Yeah.
How did you get into Buddhism?
So, before doing my inaugural professorial lecture in, I think it was March 2014. I can't remember now. I think it was March 2014. I went to a graveyard and I walked around and I really reconnected with why I was having the career I'd had. Because a professorial lecture is an opportunity for you to talk about your contribution to knowledge in your field and why you should all be applauded for now being a full professor, the top of the tree in your area. So I walked around the graveyard and I was really connecting back with this sense of my purpose, which I'd got from 15 or 16 years old, which had led me to that point. And so that was in me then. When I then got very ill the day after I was becoming ill during the lecture, but the next day, and I got a bad flu, and this ongoing. So the professorial lecture was like the public edited version of who I am and what I've contributed, but then the question remained with me, and what I've learned is that fevers are big teachers. For myself, particularly fevers. Getting very, very sick and having a very high fever, for me, have been very important in my life. And this is kind of odd. It means that I don't welcome getting a bad flu or COVID or something. But now it's like, what's going to be revealed to me now this time? So I'm actually curious about it when I get very feverish. But this happened back then. I started to doubt everything at the foundations of what I'd been doing in my career, which was the assumption of incremental change of capitalism through voluntary action by corporations. I started to question everything. I started to question how bad the environmental situation is with biodiversity loss and climate change. And that then stayed with me. I went back to work and I was super busy, but that feeling of doubt and concern around the very foundations of my life choices and my professional choices remained with me. And therefore, I had to take a year out by 2017, September 2017, I took a year out of university, unpaid, to study the climate science. And yes, so it was in that whole process, I definitely had a yearning for spiritual sustenance because it was becoming very scary, not just scary for my future, like what's life going to be like as I get older, because of climate change and environmental degradation, but scary for the future of humanity in general, and then any deep stories I have about my contribution to others and therefore my identity. Like, how do I accept myself? What I didn't realize at the time is I didn't have self-love in a way that didn't require a story of my validity to others. My self-acceptance was conditional on other self-acceptance, according to a story I had about it. So it was super scary. Like, if I'm going to look at, oh shit, I've been an idiot and I'm not helping and none of this matters, then that would remove my story of self-worth, and therefore, because I didn't have enough self-love, I would be lost. So I needed a spiritual sustenance in that whole process. And so, yes, in the run-up to taking the year off, and then during the year off, the nature of reality, the nature of the divine, the nature of who I am, is there a purpose and meaning in my life? All of that was huge, and therefore drew me to what would be labeled now sort of a variety of New Age practices. So I moved to Bali, and everything was available to me.
When did you move to Bali? When did you move to Bali?
Early January 2018. So then I was able to do improv theatre and yoga and authentic relating and various different strange workshops and all kind of things. It was all the stuff that anyone who's hung out in so-called conscious communities will know is available. So breath work actually was really important for me. Perhaps breathwork might have been, I haven't done breathwork for a couple of years, but that was super important for me back then. So that accompanied my research into what does the climate science saying, rather than what's the IPCC saying about the climate science.
I'm curious to explore a bit the theme of honesty with you. In the paper in 2018, Deep Adaptation, you were radically honest in a way that it's inappropriate for conventional academia. I really appreciated also how you were speaking directly to the people reading that paper and being real. I want to ask you a bit about the decision-making process of being so honest in that paper. If this was something you hesitated or not, and then just in general, what does honesty mean to you, and if you feel it's a value you can't help but live by, or what's your experience with honesty?
I was doing the research starting October 2017. And the previous 3 years, when there was a really worrying new scientific report or a bit of data, for example, about permafrost melting in Siberia, I would file that away. And then, I finally had time to look at all the things I'd filed away. And you have to ask me the question again. Yeah,
so we can start with...
the deep adaptation paper. What is it you want to ask?
Yeah, I can even read.
The deep adaptation
we no
paper.
longer have time for the career games of aiming to publish in top-ranked journals to impress our line managers or improve our CV. for if we enter the job market, nor do we have a need for the narrow specialisms that are required to publish in such journals. So yes, I'm suggesting that in order to let oneself evolve in response to the climate tragedy, one may have to quit a job and even a career. However, if one is prepared to do that, then one can engage with an employer and professional community from a new place of confidence. So you are honest in several ways. I'm just curious to explore this decision-making process of being so honest in an academic paper.
Right. Yeah, so I was researching it anyway, and then someone asked me to write a paper for the 10th anniversary of a journal that I was on the board of, a sustainable development business journal. And so, yeah, I'd got to the point of, okay, wow. So my conclusion, and therefore my reality about the climate, is that it's so bad, there's so much momentum, it's going to get really worse, and it's so much so that it will break down industrial consumer societies in my lifetime. And therefore the story I was working to around incremental change through getting corporations to improve a bit was just bullshit. So that was my private conclusion. Now, I could have just lived that conclusion myself. I could have quit my job. But then there was this invitation to do this paper. And I thought, I'm not going to be happy quitting something that I had given so much of my effort to and influenced so many people on. I'd written books, and I met people where they say my books on corporate sustainability had changed their lives, helped start them on their career. So it didn't feel right somehow to just quit my sector, my profession. Also, it didn't feel right because it felt like I should try and tell some people about how bad things are as I see it. So then I wrote the paper, but as I was writing the paper, it's what's called a review paper. So it's not primary research. It's just a paper where you're analyzing research and giving your interpretation of a body of work. So that's the kind of academic paper it was. And but as I was writing it, it was like, I can't believe I'm just writing it in such a dry way. This is life-changing for me and for anyone who reads this. And so that brought it, that emotion was in it because of that. And yeah, I was in a bit of an emotional state. I was in a state of fear, outrage, grief, and I didn't know what to do with those things. So yeah, it all ended up being kind of this almost brutal honesty in the paper. And so it's kind of understandable that the reviewers said that's not an academic way of writing. So
would you say that brutal honesty is one of your values?
No.
Okay.
No. No, there's a time and place for like why do we open our mouths? Why do we write anything? Is it just for ourselves? Or is it to try and have an impact? And so sometimes we need to be much more tactful and careful with what we say and when. So at that point, brutal honesty with my profession was what I needed, and I thought what might be useful for them. Yeah, it was a conscious choice to do it that way. But yeah, it went way beyond my profession. It became something that people who had nothing to do even with environment read. So it wasn't even just the broader environmental field. It was people who had nothing to do with the environment who read it, like Labour politicians, and who then became co-founders of Extinction Rebellion. Or it was like it became very big, and I don't know quite why, but
yeah, your story reminds me a bit of that movie Don't Look Up. I don't know if I'm the first person telling you this, probably not.
No, I don't think anyone said that.
Really? No. Have you watched the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, also because basically you went viral talking about the inevitable collapse of our civilization. I'm curious because I see here in this moment of your life that on one hand, there was a dying of your ego and of your identity as this sustainable development practitioner and professor. And then on the other hand, you go viral and basically you become famous in a niche for this paper that you published. I'm curious how that public recognition affect or not your personality, ego. How was that experience to basically be so recognized by such a harsh topic?
It really helped that I was on that explicit spiritual path, and had friends who were also on their very explicit spiritual path. And at the same time as this happening. So it helped me. What does this moment need? And so I was very focused on how I can use this attention at me to guide attention towards the wisdom keepers, the people I knew were great and had great things to say, like Joanna Macy and other people. So I created the Deep Adaptation Forum for people who were getting in touch with me and telling me that I need to tell them what to do with their lives. I said, no, you talk to each other, and here are some great, often women actually, great women to listen to. And that felt the right way for me to respond at the time. I thought I was managing well my attention and keeping balance, but I wasn't. If I hadn't become famous at that time, I would have stayed more on my path, and I remember I was talking to a retreat center, and I may have just joined them and become the joint manager, and so I would have probably become a breathwork. But I think it's such a distant memory. I think I was thinking about training to be a breathwork facilitator. Yeah. So now I can't remember the last time I did breathwork.
Not doing that, not going more inside?
I might do. I've got some health problems now that I wouldn't have had if I'd actually just prioritized, if I'd stayed on the path rather than responded to this, as you say, sort of like fame in a niche, and from a sense of responsibility, then worked very hard in maintaining this analysis and promoting it and defending this analysis and defending this community of people worldwide that was coming together. If I hadn't worked so hard on that, I would have naturally more easily looked after my body, and so I wouldn't have a hernia now that needs an operation. I wouldn't have the bit of arthritis in my neck, which I now need to really change my diet and way of life and not sit in front of a laptop. I would be a bit different, I guess. But who knows? I feel quite proud of myself for some of the intellectual work I've done and some of the organizing work I've done as well over the last 7 years.
Yeah, at the same time, I remember this part in Breaking Together where you describe when you were walking in the beach, texting a friend, I think from Extinction Rebellion, and you had the sense of dawning on you that it was kind of something you were meant to do, to continue writing about this issue and really contributing for creating the foundations for deep adaptation, kind of intellectual.
That was later.
Okay.
So I had quit the Deep Adaptation Forum. So that would have been autumn. That would have been kind of October 2020, and that was a moment when I could have stepped back from the public intellectual role and advocacy role, and gone back to my original path that I would have been on, which would have been more about holistic health and spirituality and so on. But I had a chat with her, and she said, "Get on the front foot," which is a phrase in England. Move forward, seize the agenda, don't hold back. And then I set up the Scholars Warning on societal disruption and collapse, and then I got funded to do more research, and then ended up writing the book. So
Breaking together.
That was a turning point. Those WhatsApp messages audio messages we sent each other.
Do you resonate?
Oh, by the way, I don't say that in the book, do I? No, I was microdosing on magic mushrooms on the beach that day.
Okay.
Yeah. So some people say it helps you transcend your ego and all that, and just love. And it was beautiful, sparkly beach, particularly because it was super sparkly beach. It seemed, but what did it do? It helped me commit to yet more time in front of my laptop. I mean, basically, if you don't know what's going on inside my head or what I'm typing out, whatever, if you look at my life the last few years, it's just so much time just spent in front of a laptop. So this year I've really deliberately tried to hold myself back from too much of that. So meetings to do with the farm and the organic farm school in Bali, and also playing music with friends and writing folk tunes and mantras and performing those in kirtans and being in the music studio recording. I'm doing that. I'm doing all of that partly because I'm not someone who can seem to just sit around. So unless I'm filling my life with something like that, I'll end up studying some scientific area and writing a paper on it. I can't seem to just chill.
Do you resonate with the language of calling? Did you feel you had this call that you couldn't help but live in that moment and in general?
Yeah, the deep adaptation paper felt like it was something I had to do or that had to be done. We can frame it either way. I couldn't have felt happy with the knowledge I thought I had without writing that for other people. So is that a calling? Sort of. The word calling, the frame calling, it's like, oh, so that means some aspect of reality or the universe is communicating with us and inviting us to do something. There's an emphasis on some kind of consciousness and some kind of things to be done. I mention that because...
Is that how you see it?
I mention that because I don't think I have I don't have a understanding of spirituality and the divine aspect of reality whereby it's outside of you or me. We're all part of it and it's all part of us. So, and also I no longer privilege the idea of doing rather than being. So yeah, the word calling is okay for me, but also it maybe can sometimes externalize something as a god and prioritize our doing rather than just being. And I've got to be careful for that because I've got a whole my Christian heritage means that I think that sacrifice is good, all that sort of thing, and I'm trying to be careful with that.
Okay. Let's move a bit to breaking together and your message, which you're inquired about very often. Yeah, I guess, we talked a bit also about already the deep adaptation paper. I really appreciated in breaking together that you not only summarized the science, that you actually proposed what people can do with their lives confronted with this predicament. So maybe to also have a sense more of your message, how would you describe what it means to be a doomster?
Right. Yeah. So, the suffix stir, S-T-E-R, some ways of understanding that is it means master of whatever that you're talking about. Hipster, so you're a master of being hip, being cool. Gangster, you're a master of being in a gang. So it's this, and so on. So the idea, I thought I'd reclaim a term. Some people use the term doomster, but unspecifically about people who have a negative view of the future. In the same way people say doomer is someone with a negative view of the future. And I thought I'd say, no, doomster has more potential in it as a term to describe people who believe that societies are breaking down or will break down, but because of that, they've integrated that awareness and they've allowed it to change who they are and what they do in a creative, socially engaged way. And so, yeah, for me, doomsters are the most exciting people alive today. They're the people I want to know and hang out with. However, I recognize a lot of people are not exposed to the kind of analysis that I've discovered. And or they're not ready for it. It doesn't mean they're not doing wonderful things. So most of the musicians that I work with aren't really aware of all this stuff. But I love their life choices anyway. Maybe they don't necessarily need to know all this stuff. For me, I needed the end of the world in order to help me be more human and have more fun. But maybe they don't seem to need that. But yeah, no, doomsters for me are awesome people. That's there. And of course, not that many people call themselves doomsters, but it might catch on.
Okay, I want to read a section of your book.
Okay.
So you can read while I do that. Although many people are breaking apart into self-righteous factions, many people have been breaking together, whereby they allow the upsetting situation to break down their old habits so that they become more open-hearted and open-minded in how they live their life, including the way they relate to other people. As a result, they're dramatically changing their lives to prioritize creativity and social contribution. They're worrying less about their career, their financial security, or following the latest trend. They're helping those in need, growing food, making music, campaigning for change, and exploring spiritual paths. That is happening because they have rejected the establishment's view of reality and no longer expect its officers to solve any of the worsening problems in their society. After decades of greed, hypocrisy, lies, corruption, and stupid policies, they're no longer waiting for any elites to rescue the planet. As they let go of false hopes that they will be saved, they can move through grief and begin living creatively again with an awareness of how every day is a blessing. This doesn't mean they don't grieve, worry, or feel sad, angry, but that their feelings of wonder and gratitude about life don't immediately trigger those other difficult emotions or keep them stuck there. Instead, they are living life more fully, according to what they value. It is precisely because these people regard modern societies to be breaking down that they are living more freely. They need neither an underground bunker nor a fairy tale of a better tomorrow as they live today for truth, love, and beauty. Who are they? I call them doomsters. I am one of them. Perhaps you are too. I think this is an excellent passage.
Yeah, you have to do a lot of hard work before you get to that stuff. It would have been more fun to write a book all like that, wouldn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me about your doomster life, Jem, now in Bali, and also how you're finding this balance. You're into music, you mentioned a bit. I'm also curious about your work at the Green School, but also yesterday you mentioned now you are excited to do a different kind of writing. Just what animates you these days?
Yeah, so I live in Bali. I have done for a few years, and I gave up my last remaining fractional appointment at a university in the UK to go fully independent. So now I am co-owning and running a small organic farm and farm school, which struggles financially, and we rely on donations. Oops. So if you want to have a successful business, don't try and don't set up a business to offer courses to third world farmers. We offer it free, so we have to. And we're having some impact there, and that's fun to see. Through the Organic Farm School, I therefore meet people in Bali who I wouldn't otherwise meet, and that's nice. That's great. That's grounding for me. Gets me outside of the foreigner bubble, which otherwise I would be in. Also in Bali, I particularly this year, I've given a lot of my time to learning to get better at guitar and singing and learning lots of mantras, so that there's about 50 mantras now I know by heart, and that's Hindu, Buddhist, but also Sikh, and also now I'm learning. I'm writing my own mantras in different religious, spiritual traditions and performing those, and then I learn by trying how to hold space with people singing together. I've enjoyed that, and that was a deliberate choice this year to gift that focus for me, that time, because it does take time. It really does take time to become comfortable with a new song and how to play it. It's one thing to play it for yourself, and then it's another to play it with other people, and it's another to play it with other people without the music in front of you in order to be present with the people. It's like every stage, you need more time, more experience, more practice. And you need to just get it wrong as well and then do it again. So that's good. That's enjoyable. Bali and the international community in Bali has been a really supportive place for that. I don't know anywhere else where it could be a sort of gentle and welcoming for experimenting as a new musician. So those two big things in my life. The other big thing in my life is I have a blog, and there are about 5,500 subscribers who get emails from my blog, and I've been writing about various different aspects of the so-called meta-crisis, or sort of a positive response to collapse. I write maybe an essay on that every 2 weeks, and I'm letting myself also be a little bit more relaxed about the level and quality of referencing and data. I'm beginning to talk about various different areas in a more casual way, and trusting that if people want to cross-check my work, they can, especially now in the age of AI and ChatGPT, they can check and get the references themselves. So it used to be a lot more hard work for me to write, because I would make sure I had an academic reference for every syllable in my writing. And now I'm just writing more as a commentator and an opinionated bastard. That's how I'm doing it. And it's fun, and people seem to respond. And now I'm launching a Meta-Crisis Meetings initiative, where we're meeting. We just had the first one. I think about 150 people have signed up for that now. And then if we hit 200, then next year I'll launch the Meta-Crisis Mentors program, which means people once a week can be getting together in groups and providing peer support. But unlike the Deep Adaptation Forum, this time I'm going to be more focused on how people can help people do stuff. Rather than just providing emotional and psycho-spiritual support. It's going to be a bit more about how to do stuff, and also a little bit more emphasis on actually celebrating who we are. I think in the past, it's a little bit too much, so almost being slightly apologetic for the conclusions we've reached. And now it's a bit more of a hell yeah. Yeah, this is how we see things. Lucky that we've discovered this in time, and we've met each other, and we're doing cool things now. So it's almost like being very grateful for the awareness of collapse that we've reached. It's a slightly different mood, which reflects my mood. I don't want to go on and on and on about how awful everything is and how bad it is and how upsetting and how we could have done things differently and how tragic it is. It's like, I've done a lot of that.
I'm curious to ask, and you don't need to answer if you don't want to, then how is your financial, your income coming now from your writing and these courses? Because you say also that the school is not profitable.
Yeah. So
because I also feel that's part of being a doomster, is also embracing that risk and also finding new ways, to finance ourselves.
So that was a decision to quit university and the job for life that I had. Living in Indonesia makes things very cheap and very possible. Particularly, it was during COVID or soon after COVID, that I took the lease on my house there for 10 years, and I took a lease on the farm for 15 years. And the money I got from that was selling some land I'd bought on a whim in the Philippines many years ago. So that was how I managed to do that. But I'm able to have staff. I'm able to pay for musicians. I'm able to do things in ways that I just couldn't afford if living anywhere in Europe, for example. And to have my accommodation covered in Bali for it'll be another 6 years, gives me a great sense of freedom. And so I did wonder, this was bothering me actually. It was really bothering me until about 2 months ago. Like, can I make money out of being a really rubbish musician? Like, I guess so. Yeah, I could, if I really got into marketing the kirtans or heart dance or universal peace dances or whatever, I suppose I could. Yeah, it's going to be tough. And really, I don't want that. I don't want that pressure or that issue. I just want to keep enjoying learning and playing musically. And then, of course, you can't make money out of release. I've released about 8 songs now with music videos or whatever. You can't make money from that. It's just a very expensive, narcissistic hobby, really. So, yeah. So, no, what happened is that 2 months ago, I decided I could monetize the following I have if I offer them something extra. And I thought, I don't want to charge people to see my writing, but I'll charge people to get together with other people who follow my work and make it cheap. So I'm looking forward to maybe 300 subscribers, which would be $80 a year, which, what's the back of the envelope? Is that $24,000 a year? Which also, because I live in Indonesia, I could pay someone about $5,000 a year of that to be helping me as my assistant. And that's a very good wage for part-time work in Indonesia. And so that kind of is like, okay, I'm sorted then. It means a little bit of pressure I need to keep thinking about what's relevant to say and on a regular basis. But I also have, even when I didn't have that pressure, I kept writing the last few years since the book came out anyway. So that's a limited amount of money, and it wouldn't really help me live in many parts of the world. It wouldn't if I have dependents. I don't have children. I have a new partner. She might want children. It is probably possible for me to afford that if I stay living in Indonesia. I'd probably have to move out of somewhere like Ubud and go somewhere cheaper. That's all possible on a very low income like that I mentioned. And of course, it might get disrupted. Suddenly, people might quit my blog or might get hacked. I've just thought about that. I must make sure I download some emails, databases and stuff. Yeah, now I realized, because now it's my livelihood. Oops, better pay more attention to that. It helps not to have big costs. So many people have a mortgage, and I don't. Yeah.
You want to say something else? Seems there's something there. You want to say?
There are downsides of moving somewhere cheap.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the digital nomad thing is brilliant. I think everyone should do it if you can. If you can work online, then do go somewhere where you don't have to work hard to pay the bills. And then, because then you free up space, and in that space, you'll experiment more. You'll do some additional things, and those might become your future business, your future income, and open more opportunities. For me, being mobile has been really important. Mm-hmm. I just couldn't see myself doing what I've done if I stayed living in the UK.
What are the downsides?
Cultural pressure, because it's my country, and therefore I would be constantly subconsciously judging myself in comparison to what might be expected of a 52-year-old man with my education and experience. The horrendous price of everything. I don't have a house in the UK. I couldn't. Mm-hmm. I'd have to come up with a new idea about how to be a earning member of society. I'd probably be having to be working in political communications or something, mm-hmm. where I've proven mm-hmm. I can do very well and have impact. And mm-hmm. How horrible would that be? See, I have a lot of freedom. Mm-hmm. I can just. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of freedom because I'm living somewhere cheap, mm-hmm. and I've designed my life to live cheap. And
okay. Before we wrap up, I have one last question. Do you want to ask any questions? No, in this context. Okay. So the last question, Jem, we can return a bit. Tell me.
Growing up.
Yeah, to growing up. And that what you said
we were going to talk about that
at the beginning. Maybe, what do you want to keep present as you keep growing up? Also, in the background of this podcast, or the living question of this podcast, is how we might live with more maturity and wisdom. So I also feel that what you shared at the beginning speaks a bit to that. Usually, wise people tend to have a very trickster, playful side. So, I'm curious, what do you now in this stage of your life want to keep present as you keep growing up?
So things have changed a bit because of having a relationship with a woman, mm-hmm. and I hadn't had a relationship for a few years. And that has made me think more about what are some of the easier choices for me to make.
In what sense? Easiest?
Easier in terms of, I am a little bit worried about income rather than living off savings. So what's the easiest way to be useful and do something I like and make some money, rather than a more high-risk approach? Because before she came along, I was convinced I was going to write a musical about the end of the world. It would be a dark comedy musical. And I have no idea whether I could do that, mm-hmm. but it would be but I'd have to learn to become better at songwriting, and then I'd have to write a concept for the story, and then do that, and then I'd have to get them recorded, and then probably get funding for an animation team, because I would do it as a cartoon thing. It was going to be a massive 2-year project, where how am I going to fund it? And then that was the ambitious Jem. Mm-hmm. That would be that story repeating itself. And I was convinced this is going to happen. And I know the story, and it's going to be great, and it's going to have 1 million views on YouTube and then be turned into a stage performance. Convinced. And then I thought, but the stress of such a thing. And instead now it's like, no. Make sure that I can have a nice daily life where I'm not stressing about my future income, where I'm not stressing about current work, where I'm looking a bit more after my health because I've got some health issues that I need to address. And I'm seeing my friends, that I'm staying in touch with my old friends that I don't see face to face. Just get a bit more balance and have a nice time with my new partner, and what are her needs, and and get everything nice and organized. And And then, is there space for me to learn how to write a musical? Is there space for me to start writing songs for the musical rather than write some mantras for performing next Tuesday? Like, and then we'll see. So that's being a little bit more patient with me rather than chasing the greatest, awesomest new thing that's happened. Is that me growing up? I don't know. It's me adjusting to my age, my physical capabilities. It's adjusting to a sense of priorities and responsibilities, and it's me appreciating what I already have rather than chasing what I don't have. It's me allowing myself to be small and look after myself. For me, I suppose that's maturing. However, other people will come along and say, Jem, chase your dreams. Don't play small. You're amazing. Be everything you can be. Yeah, this musical you could get an Oscar for it. You could change the world. Like, stop playing small with these boringly long intellectual books. And, you could be on Joe Rogan, not on Carlota's podcast. Like, I'd rather be here. Anyway, but people who talk like that, all that life coachy nonsense. Anyway, so but for me it feels right to just be a bit more contained at the moment.
Jem Bendell is the author of Breaking Together, in Portuguese, Juntos na Ruptura. To learn more about his book and work, check out the links in the description of this episode. He's currently offering monthly online meetings on the meta-crisis for anyone curious to learn more. Waking Youth is a project with a living question. What would it mean for us in the privileged corners of the world to live into maturity with more wisdom as individuals and as a collective? Besides these podcast interviews, we offer written pieces, book clubs, workshops, in-person retreats, and weekly yoga classes. To learn more, subscribe to our newsletter at wakingyouth.org. Our theme music is composed and produced by Carlos Sierra, who also edits our episodes, and I'm Carlota Guedes. If you like this episode, please consider sharing it with someone you think might appreciate it. Thank you for being here with us, and talk to you soon.